Kehan Kalhor, Night, Silence, Desert. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. Senior diplomats from the United States, Britain, China, France, Germany, and Russia are gathering today in Germany to discuss Iran's nuclear ambitions. The previously scheduled talks come a day after Tehran announced it's launched its first domestically made satellite. The White House responded to Iran's satellite launch by describing it as a, quote, matter of acute concern, and adding it would deal with Iran using, quote, all elements of our national power. The comments were made by White House Press Secretary Robert Gibbs at Tuesday's briefing.
Efforts to develop missile delivery capability, efforts that continue on an illicit nuclear program, or threats that Iran makes toward Israel and its sponsorship of terror are of acute concern to this administration. The president is clear that he wants Iran to be a responsible member of the world community. Again, I would underscore the responsible, that with that goes responsibilities. The actions, this action does not convince us that Iran is acting responsibly to advance stability or security in the region. All of this continues to underscore that our administration will use all elements of our national power to deal with Iran and to help it be a responsible member of the international community.
Secretary of State Hillary Clinton also expressed concern over developments in Iran Tuesday.
Well, we are obviously concerned about Iranian behavior on a very broad base. It's not limited to any one event or activity. And as you know, we're undergoing a comprehensive review of how best to approach Iran and how to influence its behavior going forward.
At an earlier news briefing with the British Foreign Secretary, Clinton discussed Iran's opportunity to, quote, step up and become a productive member of the international community.
As President Obama said, we are reaching out a hand, but the fist has to unclench. And we will see how we proceed together toward a policy that we believe represents the objectives that we share vis-a-vis Iran.
Clinton's words echoed President Obama's message to Iran in his interview last week with the Arabic-language channel Al Arabiya. The Iranian President, Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, responded to Obama's offer during a speech at a rally in Tehran last week. He called for, quote, fundamental change in U.S. policy to Iran.
Those who say they want to create change, this is the change. They should apologize to the Iranian nation and try to make up for their dark past and all the crimes they have committed. We welcome change, but on the condition that change is fundamental and is on the right track.
I'm joined right now in Washington, D.C. by a former State Department official who was one of a small number of American diplomats authorized to negotiate with Iran from 2001 to 2003. Hillary Mann Leverett, the former director of Iran and Afghanistan affairs at the National Security Council. She's now the CEO of a political risk consultancy called, well, Hillary, you can help me, Strategia, and writes frequently about how the United States should approach Iran. One of her best-known pieces, co-written with her husband, Flint Leverett, is called The Grand Bargain. It appeared in the Washington Monthly and the New America Foundation website last October. Hillary Mann Leverett, welcome to Democracy Now! How do you pronounce your company?
Strategia.
Strategia. The Grand Bargain, what is it, and can you respond to the launch, Iran says, of a domestic satellite?
Yeah, let me take the domestic satellite piece first. I think, you know, anytime Iran takes a step toward possibly promoting an unconventional weapons program, whether it's for research or otherwise, has to be of concern to countries that don't have a diplomatic or otherwise good relationship with Iran. So, of course, we're going to be concerned about that. I think, however, we need to learn, particularly from recent history, the past 5 to 7 years, 8 years, that we need to really look hard at what is going on, what is the evidence for any kind of program that could require some sort of coercive response, particularly from us. For example, just on the space launch, in August, Iran also claimed to have launched a space satellite, and then a couple of weeks later, we determined that that was a fake. And so here we are at the 30th anniversary of the revolution, where there's a lot of incentive in Iran to try to do something to mark the revolution, and we need to really question whether this was an actual launch and what it really means for the proliferation capabilities of the Islamic Republic.
And how do you determine it, by the way, whether it's a fake or not?
Well, there are a lot of ways that the intelligence agencies here and in other countries can look at footage. The Iranians actually, put everything on live television, or they try to put it onto, a website to show that they've done the launch, to prove to themselves, to Iranians inside in particular, that they've taken this step. So there's a lot of things that you can look at. We also have a variety of kind of capabilities to understand what goes on inside Iran, but it's not perfect, and that's why I caution that even if there's been an announcement, we certainly saw Saddam Hussein frequently talk about his various unconventional weapons programs, and that didn't turn out to be the case. So we need to be really cautious here, particularly in light of the August determination that that the launch wasn't, didn't really have was not true. It was a fake. That was the determination here. So we need to be really careful.
And the second part of what you were saying.
The second part, I think, comes from this issue of the space launch and our concern about it here, and our allies' concern about Iran's potential proliferation capabilities. For me, the way I see it, the fundamental question is how do we view Iran today, 30 years after the revolution that brought us the Islamic Republic? Your interview with Shireen Ebadi was very, very interesting and I think important. 30 years later, Iran is no longer really an immature revolutionary movement. It is the government, the regime is a mature polity, I would argue, increasingly capable of taking rational decisions to promote its national interest, to act instrumentally and rationally to promote the interests of Iran as a nation state, and particularly to protect itself and to look at its legitimate security concerns and to take steps to protect itself. That's, I think, a really important way to try to look at Iran. In contrast, the predominant conventional wisdom here in Washington, the way a lot of people look at Iran, without very much evidence, I'd say with no evidence, is that Iran is ideologically driven, bent on becoming history's first suicide nation, that they're going to develop a nuclear weapons program and actually use nuclear weapons in a way that's not deterrable. They're going to actually use them in a first-use situation. We have no evidence of that. In contrast, when you look at how Iran behaved during the Iran-Iraq War in the 1980s, an 8-year war where more than 500,000 Iranians were killed, in part with Saddam Hussein using chemical weapons against them, the Iranians took a decision. We actually, now there's archival material that shows some of the debate within the Iranian leadership. They took a decision not to use chemical weapons back against the Iraqis. So we actually have some sense of an ability by the Iranians to take some pretty severe hits and to not go first to some sort of unconventional weapons option to use against even its archest foes like Iraq was during the 1980s. So you have this idea here in Washington that Iran is ideologically driven to become history's first suicide nation, with, I think, very little, if no evidence to substantiate that, versus what I see as really an Iranian polity 30 years later, 30 years after the revolution, that is increasingly capable of taking rational steps and to act instrumentally to promote its national interest. And in that regard, the way I think it's critically important to look at Iran today, for this administration to look at Iran, is through what Iran says are their legitimate security interests, their legitimate security concerns. And for this administration to try to get at those legitimate security concerns and to provide Iran with security guarantees to try to meet those security concerns. Now, here in Washington, for any administration to give the Iranian government, this Iranian government that supports groups like Hamas and Hezbollah, to give that government security guarantees would be anathema. It just wouldn't be possible the way our politics are configured here, and it wouldn't make much sense if Iran was to continue to support groups that took actions, sometimes violent, against Americans or American allies. So to me, the critical, the way to look at this, to unlock it, to unpack it, to get through this kind of Gordian knot, is to firmly put on the table that we are willing to give Iran security guarantees, and we can go into how do you make that tangible.